Okay, so the supplies you need to build a bear fence for your bees include a fence charger. Some people say that you need a 1 joule fence charger, and it has been our experience that this 5-mile charger will work for a small enclosure for, you know, 4 to 6 hives or something like that. Once you start making a bigger fence with more sort of mileage and the ability to short out and stuff, you might want a more expensive one. But as long as these are functioning properly, we haven't had a problem with them. The only time we've ever had a problem is if the battery goes dead or something and we haven't checked on it and it's actually not hot, and then the bear can figure that out. But seemingly this one works fine. You need hot wire. We like this thinner 17 gauge. It's easier to manipulate than the thicker wire. You need some insulators. We like these lockjaws. I'll explain that more later. T-posts, 4 to 6 of them. I like the 5-footers. Ground rod. These come in 8-foot lengths. We cut them in half to make more 4-foot lengths because 4 seems to be enough and they're expensive. Insulated wire or insulation that you can put on your wires. A level, a hoe or shovel. Optional but helpful is some patio leveling sand. Optional but very helpful is a T-post driver, but in a pinch you could just use a sledge. Tape measure, gate handles, you need 5 of these. Screwdriver, pliers, wire strippers and cutters. A ground rod clamp. They sell these at the Tractor Supply. They're called ground rod clamps. They clamp onto the ground rod. And these little wire taps for joining hot wires together. Hello, we are here building a bear fence. So we want to show you how we build a bear fence to protect honeybee hives. We have a little bit of a mess right here right now, but you'll see at the end of the video how we clean it up. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to level out this spot, and I can already see by eyeballing it that I need to move it a little bit. But I'm going to level out these spots with this spot with a cinder block and some sand and a level for the hive to sit on. But the bear fence to protect the bees, we just use 4 T-posts. And the most important thing about the T-post install is that you face the front of the post diagonally out. The next step that we're going to do is install this ground rod. So these ground rods come in 8-foot, and we have found that we can cut them in half and drive the 4 feet all the way to the very end with the T-post pounder over there. Malcolm is just checking the height to make sure that the posts are all the same height. And we just drove those T-posts into the ground too with the T-post pounder. So now we'll just be checking. The dimensions of this are probably 12 by 15 or so, 12 by 18 I would guess, which is enough for the bear. The main thing is that you don't want the bear to be able to reach his paw in and grab the hive and pull it out, because he will. So you can't put the hive right up against the fence. You need to have a bear's arm's length between the hive and the fence. Yeah, so we're going to adjust the height on these as needed, and we're going to drive this ground rod post, and then you'll see the next step. Okay, so now Malcolm has driven that ground rod all the way until we usually leave, you know, about 5 inches here. And the reason is because when you come and weed whack your bee yard, you want your string trimmer to just hit this, whereas if you drive this all the way into the ground, your ground wire is going to connect right here, and inevitably you will, trust me, you will tangle your weed whacker into your wire. So we solve that problem simply by elevating the wire off the ground. We like to use these lockjaws, which is something we discovered from a client actually. We used to just use the ones at the Tractor Supply, but these things are worth their weight in gold. They just snap onto the fence real easy. They're not as easy to snap off as they advertise, but they still come off pretty easy. But the most important thing, mango, is that they don't dry rot, whereas the yellow ones from the Tractor Supply do dry rot. But essentially what we do is we start about 6 inches off the ground, and you will notice this is going to be our main post that has our gate handles and our solar charger on it. So I'm going to explain later why these are in different orientations. So we'll go back over this, but usually we just put them all up, and we start about 6 inches off the ground, and then we just kind of count these knobs, and we go like,
I'll tell you what I did. I did 3 for this one off the ground. And
I think we should
5,
do. Should we do
6, 7? Is usually my strategy. You want 6 and 6?
I think we should do
Or
3 and
yeah.
3 here.
Sure.
I think the rest is fine. I
Okay.
just wonder if that ground line's too close to the bottom line.
Fine.
So if it starts to sag. Clearly we know exactly what we're doing. So we just, you know, it's not exact science, but we just kind of use these to count like 3, 3, 3, 6, 6 kind of thing. You want to start at about 6 inches, and you want to go up to like at least 4 feet high. The bears are not very good jumpers, but they are very good climbers. So you just want to make sure that you've got a fence that is something they can't leap over. And to that point, you don't want to put your fence right up against a big tree. So like if our fence were right up against this big tree, the bear could climb that tree and then jump in. So make sure that you're kind of out in the middle of nowhere. On the hives, I've just finished, this is just an old junk bottom board that we use, not for bees because it's broken, but we use it to level. So I have the cinder blocks leveled here, and we use sand to make our lives easier for the fine adjustments at the very end. But essentially, you want them spaced so that the bottom board is resting totally on them. And then you want to level it such that you've got a little slight tilt to the front. So you can see this hive is tilting ever so slightly down. And that's what you want so that water does not pool in here. Water will run out the door. That's very important, because if you have it sitting back like this, you will find water stored back in these corners, which is bad. And then you just, you know, you kind of want it level side to side. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect because it's going to settle and you might need some more sand to make fine adjustments later, but this is certainly good enough. And we just use the hoe to chop all the grass out and make a big empty space. And then we kind of level it out and put some sand in for the fine tuning. Now what Malcolm's working on is our very high-tech gate handle hooks. You're going to need some gate handles so that you can get in and out of your fence that will hold the electric wire. And the way that we do this is very simply, we take some of our insulated wire and we just cut these little loops. You can buy a more expensive piece of equipment for this, but this totally does the job and in my opinion holds up better. So we just cut little like 7-inch pieces, use a wire stripper to expose both ends, and then you just twist it around itself to make a place to hook your gate handle. Okay, so the way that we wire these is we start with one gate handle, we take the wire, and we just kind of temporarily loop it through here because you're going to want to tighten that later. So just temporarily fasten that. And then you go all the way around the fence, putting your wire into the insulators as you go. The most important thing is that your hot wire cannot touch your T-posts. Otherwise it will not work. They have to be floating in space via plastic. So now what Malcolm's going to do is just loop in and go down and then head back the other direction. Put that in. Watch your fingers when you do this because those spools of wire will slice you. They're very sharp. And then now, once he gets back around here, he's going to cut it and attach it to the second gate handle down. So wire number 1 and wire number 2 are actually one piece of wire. You can cut them and run them separately, but this is the more lazier way, so we like it better. All right, so now if you remember, we started at the bottom and then we did 3, 3, 6, 6. And the reason is because we are going to have hot wire, hot wire, hot wire, hot wire. So counting from the top, that's 1, 2, 3, 4. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a ground line in between. And I'll explain how the ground line works later, but the most important part of this is that we just repeat the process for these 2 wires. So Malcolm started on this handle, went all the way around the fence, got back here, went down, and then went back around the fence. So all 4 of these wires are going to be hot wires, and they are made up of 2 longer wires. And now we're going to start the ground line, which doesn't have to be as carefully floating in space because it's going to be grounded. So it doesn't matter if it touches a T-post. If you want to be real cheap, we commiserate, and you could skip these insulators, but we like the way it looks when it's consistent looking, and we're going to tie it to the ground rod anyway. But basically, this ground line, what it does is it makes it hot, neutral, hot, which is going to end up really giving the bear the time of day if he touches it. So this wire is going to come in, and we're going to connect directly down to the ground rod, so that when the bear touches that, this whole line is grounded. Okay, so these are designed to go right on top of the T-post, and you want to make sure it's off. Circle is off, line is on, and there's a red fence and a green ground. So our next task is to connect the red fence to the hot fence and the green ground down to the ground rod. Okay, so first we're doing the ground. Whoops. Make sure you throw things on the ground, that's part of this. So we just made a little loop in the wire there, connect to the ground, screw this green thing down so it's nice and tight. And we use insulated wire for this because there's a chance that all of this stuff could knock into each other and touch. So you don't want any of your ground touching any of your hot. You want the bear to do that. So we slide it through here to make it real neat and tidy. Keeps it from hanging out loosey-goosey all over the place. So this insulated wire is going to go from the ground on the controller down to our ground rod clamp, which again is going 4 feet in the ground and is connected to this second ground wire. So we have a whole neutral system running here, and you're just going to tighten up that screw with both of those in there, nice and snug, and then cut off the extra here, or loop it around, whatever. Make it not touch your hot wires so that those are just kind of floating in space, not touching anything. Another thing to remember is that your hot 1 and 2 are one piece of wire. And then your hot 3 and 5 are one piece of wire. And then the ground, number 4, is separate. So in order for the electricity to flow to the bottom 2 wires, we need to connect number 2 to number 3. So we just use a really simple little bridge wire here with these wire taps. You can buy a special tool to crimp the wire taps down, but we don't use enough of them to justify the tool, so we just wrestle it down with a pair of pliers. Crimp that closed. Same thing there. And then the bridge wire just joins those two so that the hot electricity can flow through all 4 hot wires. Okay, so we have the charger on. We have connected the hot wire to the fence. This is not focusing. It's like all blurry. Ugh. Anyway, this connection here is, there we go, from the hot to the fence, and then we have the ground going to the ground, and we have our 2 wires bridged. Number 2 and number 3 are bridged, and then number 4 is free floating and connected to the ground. We pulled all of the wires nice and tight and tightened it here at the handle. You can just untwist this and pull the wire a little bit tighter and retwist it to get everything a little bit more snug. But once it's nice and tight, it looks nice and sharp and very fancy. So, okay, so here's another fence we did today. This one is the exact same concept, but it's a little bit bigger. So you can see we have 6 posts instead of 4, and we're gonna put 3 hives in here that we leveled all out. And the reason we did this is because we've left room to put hives 4 and 5 in here in the future when these hives are going to be ready to split. Same thing, we got our fence charger, hot going to hot, ground going to ground. And the last thing we need to show you is how to test it and make sure it's working. So we got these little testers on Amazon. You can try and find a different one, but I would recommend digital. These were like 25 bucks, so they're worth every penny. The ones with the lights just are really bad, so just skip it and get a digital one. So we're going to turn the fence on, and you should hear a faint popping. You probably can't hear it in the video, but you also have a light flashing. That's a good sign. And then this stabby part goes to ground. And then what this is reading is that we're getting about 7,000 volts on here. And so when the bear puts his leg or body in this against these same 2 wires, 7,000 volts are going to run through him very briefly, and it's going to hurt pretty bad, but he'll be okay. So you can see that if you want to start at the bottom and show like the hot. So that one's hot, that one's ground, so you don't really have anything on it. Then hot, hot, hot. And you should be getting the same reading just about on every single wire that is hot. If you're not getting the same reading on every hot wire, something is wrong. And typically it'll be like this wire is touching a T-post, or something is crisscrossed out there. So you just want to make sure you're getting a nice juicy reading on every one of those wires. But that's it. That's how we do our bear fences.